The world is shifting. If you listen closely, you can hear it. The sound of the old master's grip slipping. The ground beneath their feet is cracking, and the arrogant roar of a colonial cannon that once echoed across this continent has been replaced by a much different sound. It is a desperation scratching of a hungry fading empire at the gate of Ouagadougou. We are witnessing a great crisis consuming the global north. The Middle East remains a furnace of conflict, and Europe stands hollowed out, starving for the very resource they once stole with impunity. The eyes are turning back to Africa, but make no mistake, they are coming as equal partners. They are coming as sophisticated beggars cloaked in the velvet robes of high diplomacy. This is the hour of a great African reclamation. While organizations like Human Rights Watch prepare their reports trying to demonize young leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traore, we have to ask a fundamental question. Where was their deep concern for human rights when our world was being systematically drained? Why do they only discover the sanctity of life when an African leader decides to own his own nation's destiny? On the 2nd of April 2026, the machinery of Western moral superiority was set into motion once again. Human Rights Watch dropped a document accusing the government forces of Burkina Faso for grave violations. They point their fingers at Traore and his military with the profound arrogance of a people who believe they hold a monopoly on morality. But let us examine the unvarnished truth. For over a decade, France and her Western allies operated military in the Sahel. They had the bases, they had the drones, they had the elite intelligence, and yet, under their watchful eyes, the Sahel burned, schools were reduced to ashes, villages were slaughtered, millions of our people were displaced, terrorists roamed freely, well armed and well funded. Where were the glossy reports stemmed? Where was the international outrage from Geneva and New York when African blood was spilled under so-called protection of the West? There was only silence, a deafening, complicit silence. The moment a young African leader stands up, the moment Ibrahim Traore says enough, the moment he decides to arm his own people and sever the umbilical cord of new colonial dependence, suddenly the West discovers its conscience. This is not a defense of human rights. It is the weaponization of human rights. It is a calculated geopolitical use to delegitimize any leader who refuses to be a puppet. How can the architects of the most brutal exploitation in human history suddenly appoint themselves as our moral guardians? The very foundations of their world were built upon the systematic denial of our humanity. They trafficked our ancestors. They carved up our continent in Berlin. They assassinated our visionaries. And yet, they have the unmitigated gall to lecture us on the sanctity of life. To them, human right is a press release. To the mother in Royal Burkina Faso, human right is the right to sleep at night without the sound of gunfire. It is the right of a child to walk to school without stepping in on a landmine. Traore understands this. He's not fighting to please the galleries of Europe. He's fighting for the existential survival of his nation. And this terrifies the old empire. It terrifies them because Traore is not acting alone. Look at the alliance of Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger. This alliance is not just a military pact. It is a profound physiological rejection of Western patternism. They are dismantling a security architecture that was designed to fail by expelling foreign troops and tearing up exploitative defense accords. They have committed the ultimate sin through independence. The alliance has realized a bitter truth. You cannot hire a thief to guard your own house. The West did not come to the Sahel to bring peace. They came to manage chaos, to ensure the gold, the uranium, and the resources continue to flow northward while African bodies pile up in the sand. Do not be deceived by the narratives in Western newspapers. They are trying to separate the leader from the people. They will label Traore a dictator. They will label the alliance a raw coalition. Why? Because in the dictionary of the imperialists, any African who controls his own resources is a threat and must be neutralized. History has a poetic sense of irony. For 500 years, the traffic of humanity and resources flowed strictly in one direction, from the south to the north. They looked at our strongest men, our most resilient women, and the very vitality of our soil to build their shining cities on a hill. But look at those cities today. The hill is crumbling. The light is fading. We are witnessing a tectonic shift. Europe is aging, exhausted. Their supply chains are broken. Their energy grids are vulnerable. Their winter of discontent is no longer seasonal, it is structural. Because of this engineered chaos, we are about to witness a massive reverse migration. The nation that once deployed warships to Africans are now out looking south for their own salvation. They are knocking on African doors because we have the land, the sun, and the space. How will Africa respond? We cannot suffer from the pathology of historical amnesia. Africa must not become a refuge camp for architects of global instability. We must establish strategic sovereignty immediately. We need a unified, ironclad immigration policy. When they arrive, they must understand a new reality. They will not come as privileged expatriates who live above the law. They must come as ordinary immigrants. They will expect our law, our culture, our dignity, or they have to leave. Do not be seduced by their sudden desire for equal partnership. They are coming because of their stomachs. They need your lithium for their batteries. They need your uranium for their reactors. They need your arable land to feed their population. Look closely at the battlefield of the 21st century. It is no longer a war of bullets, it's a war of bread and minerals. When global supply chains shatter, the imperial glaze turns to the last fully stocked warehouse on Earth, Africa. Consider what happened just one day after house-cutting Western reports were dropped. Switzerland, a nation that prides itself on neutrality but has served as a vault for the world's plundered wealth, quietly stepped forward, pledging $23 million to Burkina Faso. Why would they hand millions to a leader the West is trying to destroy? Because Switzerland doesn't do charity, they do strategy. They see the writings on the wall. They know Paris and Washington no longer dictate the terms in Ouagadougou. They are trying to buy a seat at the table of the new African order with pocket chains. But Traore is not a beggar, he's a builder. He's auditing mining contracts that have bled his country dry for generations. He's telling multinational corporations that the era of stealing African gold while leaving African with poison water is over. He has launched aggressive agricultural initiatives to ensure his people can feed themselves. They accuse him of violating human rights, but Traore is cooperating on the frequency of human rights that predates their treaties by centuries. In 1222, the Mali Empire gave the world the Madeng Charter long before the UN was even a concept. Our ancestors laid down the right to life and dignity long before Geneva or New York claimed to be the arbiters of morality. We must stand tall. When the former colonial masters came asking for a break, we must tell them, you will not get a single grain of corn until you fall to your knees and apologize 500 years of crime against humanity. But we must also confront the enemy within, the black face in the white space. On the 25th of March, 123 nations voted at the UN to recognize the transatlantic slave trade as a grievous crime against humanity. The US, Israel, and Argentina voted no, and UK abstained. And yet, the leader of the UK Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, a woman with Nigerian blood in her veins, used her platform to attack the idea of recognizing African suffering. She called the push for reparations ignorance. This is the ultimate triumph of the colonial project, when the oppressor no longer needs the whip because the oppressed has volunteered to hold it for them. This is why the struggle must be global. To my brothers and sisters in the United States, the systematic knee on your neck in the streets of America is exactly the same knee suffocating the economy of Burkina Faso. Your fight for dignity in the diaspora is inseparable from our fight for sovereignty on the continent. When Burkina Faso reclaims its gold, that is your victory. We must detach ourselves from the illusion that our oppressors will become our survivors or our saviors. Why must the African trade is dictated by the dollar or the euro currency of nations currently draining in their own crisis? We must fund our own narratives and define our own future. We are at the precipice of history. The choice we make right now will shape the next 100 years. If we hesitate, the exhausted empires will consume our futures to prolong their present. Captain Ibrahim Traore is not just a military leader. He is a living manifesto. He is the physical embodiment of the Madden Charter resurrected. He is drawing an uncompromising line in the red dust of Africa. The time for begging is over. The time for the great African reclamation is now. When we open the doors, let us answer not as trembling servants, but as undisputed masters of our own house. I am Awesome. You've been listening to the Global Observer. The lions are waking. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another one.